This is the Chiefs official podcast network.
Take advantage of the day. When you get an opportunity in this game, you make a play. The playmakers on three. 1, 2, 3.
Touchdown, Kansas City! The Chiefs are right in the thick of it, baby! All right, welcome to this edition of Defending the Kingdom. Mitch Holthus with you, the voice of the Chiefs, along with the man we call Shop, a.k.a. Barbershop, a.k.a. the Spider, 10-year National Football League veteran Shawn Barber. As the Chiefs now, this Defending the Kingdom podcast, by the way, brought to you by 360 Vodka, the official vodka of the Kansas City Chiefs. Perfect for 2020 to get you rolling, get ready for the playoffs. But this is going to be an interesting podcast because we are entitling it The Climb Up Kilimanjaro, meaning the climb to get to this point. And what does it mean? And basically, as you know, you faithful listeners, and I hear from you all the time, around the world, basically, listen to this podcast. You know we break it down into quarters, and Shop and I are going to take each quarter of the season and make that a quarter. What did we learn? Let's go back and revisit. It's interesting, Shawn, I was on with Sports Radio 810 with Jason Anderson. He goes, you know, he played the McCole Hardman return, and he goes, it's good to go back to that time and thinking, what were you thinking at that time? Because we read the book and put it away and go, oh, yeah, I see how it ends. But you don't go back at chapter 6 and go, what was I thinking in chapter 6? Or what was going on in chapter 5? That's what we want to do in this podcast.
Man, so many times with so many different players on this roster, you can look back at weeks 1, 2, 3, weeks 7, 8, 9, and see how the time was put in, the sacrifice. The coaching staff, just when all signals were pointing to give up on a player or move on or let's try something new, whether it was fumbles, whether it was mismanaging punts, returning balls from inside the 5. Instead of them just moving on, it's like, no, he's a young man. He got plenty of talent. We'll learn from this. It'll end up paying its due, paying off as the season goes on. That was a good lesson learned. And I think McCole Hardman is a good guy to start with because there was some punts that he was fielding inside the 10-yard line that Coach Tobe was like, yeah, we probably shouldn't have fielded that one, or he could have let that one go, or we needed a better return, more north-south on that return. But as you saw him building, and then for that baby to pop in Week 17 against the Chargers, when it was about to be a one-score game, and that return really broke things open. That's how you want to draw it up. That's how a coach wants to draw it up, for things to be building, and then for things to be hitting on all cylinders here in Week 17 as you launch into the playoffs.
Keep that McCole Hardman thought, because we're going to talk about that as the first quarter of our podcast deals with the first quarter of the season, the first 4 games. Let's go back and revisit those and what it meant to build this team to this point to try to have success in the playoffs. And to me, Shop, the first 4 games of the year, winning on the road. This Chiefs team was 7-1 away from Arrowhead Stadium, 6-1 in true road games. That has not happened since the 1969 Chiefs. 2 years in a row now, the NFL has asked the Chiefs to play 3 of their first 4 games on the road. 2 years in a row, they've gone 6-0 on the road in September. Tall task. But this Chiefs team showed me a lot by being able to win in Jacksonville, in Oakland, and then to have to get basically a last game scoring drive to beat, at that time, a team with a Detroit team that had lots of life.
Man, people talk about timing and things like that. Offensively, usually it takes a while for your timing to get down with a quarterback, wide receiver, even a feel for, when you call in plays. A coordinator sometimes has to get his players get used to them in game situation. He wants to kind of feel them out. So it takes a few weeks to get used to each other. Over the last few seasons, what you've seen here with Coach Andy Reid and the Chiefs is we've been starting fast. Every season, our offense is something you got to reckon with. You better be able to reckon with them out the chute, weeks 1 through 4. If not, we'll put 45 points on you in a blink. And so that's what you've seen here in Kansas City early on in the season. Even away from Arrowhead, we haven't needed the 12th man. We haven't needed the crowd to help the defense out, to cheer them on, because our offense has been so potent. Usually in those games, by halftime, the Chiefs are up. They have control of the game. Defensively, whatever adjustments you're trying to make to Pat Mahomes and Andy Reid aren't working. And it's been something where we've been able to kind of roll on teams early in the first quarter of the season. And this season was just the same.
To me, the toughness of this team showed up in the first 4 games of this season. And we know that the Chiefs may or may not get 2 home games, depending on how this all plays out in the playoffs. But this team is built to go anywhere. They can go to Baltimore and win. They can go anywhere else and win because they've proven that. The second part, and this goes back to what you alluded to at the beginning of this podcast, and that was the development of Hardman. As I look back at this team overall, this Kansas City Chiefs team missed 259 quarters from its starters. That's not other dudes. That's the starters. That's the 22 guys I took at the beginning of the Jacksonville game in week 1 and said, all right, how many games and much time did these guys miss? Let me just go through these. It starts with Tyreek Hill. He lost 23 quarters of football, right? So if you count 4 quarters a game, do the math. That's 5.5 games. With Hill out, Damian Williams lost 22 quarters during this season. But the fact that McCole Hardman was there, speed-wise, threat-wise, remember the 83-yard touchdown against Baltimore in Week 3. People forget that game. But his ability to develop as a receiver and a returner, I thought, was monumental for this climb up Kilimanjaro.
Man, and not only not only his pedigree as far as a wide receiver and a specialist, but the foresight that Brett Veach and Coach Reed had to even bring him into the fold, knowing that there's some things off the field that might be going on with Tyreek Hill, not even foreseeing the injury factor, just there might be some games he missed. He might not be with us at the beginning of the season. So let's get this young speedster and this guy from Georgia, right? Stats didn't jump off the page because Georgia's a run-first team. But when they went and did the personal workout, his skill set was something Coach Andy Reid could really see fitting in this offense and being able to be a good weapon adjacent to Tyreek Hill, but also a good weapon if you had to replace a Tyreek Hill. We know that the Cheetah, man, he's a Pro Bowl, all-world wide receiver. He runs some killer routes. He has the elite top-level speed, and it's hard to replicate the offense if you don't have that factor. If you built the offense with that being a component and defenses are adjusting to that speed, and then if there's a reason why that speed ain't out there, sometimes defense they'll play you a little differently. They might not be as fearful of manning up and rerouting you and getting in your face because they don't fear the other receivers as much as they do Tyreek Hill. But now you see McCole Hardman, and now you see that guy. He runs 4.3 too. He got that. He has the afterburners too. They calling him the Jet. So when you see that prance out on the field, you know there's something special with that kid, and he just kept building. He kept working at it. He didn't come in here with the ego on his shoulder. He just came in and gave Coach Greg all he could. He just came to work since training camp, trying to get better, learn his routes, learn to be a receiver, and it's paying off great return on their investment when you talk about a draft pick at McCole Hardman.
Yeah, other offensive injuries, just looking at this list. Fisher missed 32 quarters at left tackle. I'll get into the defensive injuries as we go into the second quarter. But the first quarter of our podcast, Defending the Kingdom, the climb up Kilimanjaro, what has happened and what does it mean from here on, is 1, this team, road warriors. 2, the development of younger guys like a McCole Hardman. The second quarter, and this is where it gets rough. This is a bit of the rock slide. On this climb as we go. And that was the 1-3 second quarter. And interesting here, but I thought even from these 4 games, there were some positives. One was the fact that Matt Moore comes in as Mahomes goes down in that heap of bodies with that dislocated kneecap against the Denver Broncos after the Chiefs had lost to Houston and Indianapolis in back-to-back weeks. Matt Moore comes in and finds Tyreek Hill for 57 yards and a touchdown. The defense got a takeaway. They also continued AFC West dominance because they blew out Denver. And at the time, Denver wasn't the Denver that it turned out at the end of the season, although Drew Lock had them rallying at the end. But the point is the fact that this Chiefs team, even in some losses, developed some scar tissue and muscle mass that can help them in the playoffs.
Yeah, it was like each week we either won or we learned a lesson. There was no losses in the first half of the season. We went out there with an agenda to either work on something offensively, defensively, to progress. We had some young guys replacing some that next man up mentality. So it seemed like in the second quarter of the season, the goal was just to persevere. Keep persevering. Keep chipping away. Everybody in the room get better. Make sure everybody knew what they're supposed to do until the starters got back. And the amazing thing about Matt Moore was he wasn't even here for preseason. He wasn't here for camp. He's not a guy that's been in Andy's Reid offense before. Henny goes down, and we enter the season kind of without a true number 2 because we're counting on Mahomes to be there. And when Mahomes goes down, Matt Moore is signed pretty much off the street. Another just a testament to Brett Veach and his staff being ready for anything. Being ready for what we call a doomsday situation when your quarterback, your MVP quarterback goes down, and you have to find somebody that's going to come in. And at the time, you didn't know if it was going to be 2 weeks, 6 weeks. We didn't know the time frame. But what we found very early from Matt Moore is that he was capable, comparable, and able to step up to the task.
The other thing I saw was the development of these younger defensive guys. And just for a frame of reference, in the Colts game, injured and inactive, Tyreek Hill, Eric Fisher, Alex Okafor. Against the Houston Texans, inactive, injured, Sammy Watkins, Anthony Hitchens, Eric Fisher, Chris Jones. We forget about these things. Then you look at the loss to Green Bay, which was a heck of a game. That's where Matt Moore was the starter. Patrick Mahomes, Kendall Fuller, Frank Clark, Eric Fisher, Chris Jones did not play in those games. We kind of lose sight of that when you go, well, that's an L, it's a W, that's an L. So, to me, what happened in that second quarter that has helped this team get ready for the playoffs and win in the playoffs is the development of the younger guys. We saw Tano Passanio. He was awesome. He sacked Aaron Rodgers twice in the Green Bay game. Derek Nottie became a beast in the run game. The personification of watching him, and you and I watching Brandon Daly coach him in camp. Find him, rid the guy, rip him off, and go to head the tackle. And then Juan Thornhill. We started to see what makes Juan Thornhill special. Chiefs will not have him in the playoffs with the ACL injury. But that second quarter of the season, many fans would say, man, that was awful. Just get rid of it. No. There was some redeeming values in there and the development of those young defensive guys.
Yeah, especially on that, like you say, on that defensive side of the ball. There are some boxes that need to be checked every season. All right, you got to be able to stop the run. You got to be able to get after the quarterback. You got to have the right kind of leverage on man coverage. You got to be able to be very quick to respond out of zone. You can't give up big chunk plays. You know, those are game beaters. You can't give up big chunk plays. So those boxes at some point in the season have to be checked. And going through that first quarter of the season, offense was rolling, so defensively we didn't even have to check the boxes. Defense kind of was on the ride. In that second quarter, and especially when Matt Moore was starting, defense had to show up. And not only just show up and be a part of it, they had to kind of lead the fight. They had to go in there fists blazing, get ready to punch first, and let the offense kind of fill in the gap. And they did that, and they did that in a big way. And you mentioned the progress of Derek Nottie and Sanders and Passano. Passano, man, is kid from Villanova who couldn't get on the field last year. Everybody's kind of written him off a year ago as being a draft bust. He looks the part, but he laid off the ball and this and that. Andy Reid let him, Spagnuolo, get him on the field. Let's see if he can actually play if we put him on the field before we say what he can't do. Let's actually see what he can do. And when they allowed him to kind of be unshackled and put on the field, man, you just saw so many good things, so many splash plays from this young guy. He kind of deserved to play more. And when you're trying to build that 8-man roster on the defensive front, you want 8 bodies that can go out there and rotate. Passano is the guy that definitely stood out to you.
Absolutely. I think he set up the rest of his career, quite honestly. All right, we're at halftime in our look at the climb up Kilimanjaro. And we mentioned, let's go back to the way we started this, because a part of a training camp, the pressure was, let's just go right back to the AFC Championship game and pick it up where Dee Ford went offside. It's not the way it works. I'm going to repeat it. You can go back. You'll hear this on a couple different podcasts if you go back and archive it and look at it, is the fact that there are no ski lifts. You start at the bottom of the mountain. But this team, I'm proud of the way they've climbed it.
Yeah, it was no free passes. I think, and that's what when you're part of the media and you hear the reports, everybody said, "Who's your favorite to be in Miami at the Super Bowl?" And you heard on the AFC, it's the Chiefs, it's the Patriots, it's the Ravens, it's whoever it is at the beginning of the season. And you think those teams just have a free pass, like they can just come in, show up for the 16 games, and somehow when the playoffs start, they'll still be around. That's not always the case. But what we did is went to work. The defense was, it went through a complete overhaul. new coaches, the roster got turned over, and those guys had to learn how not to just learn the defense, go out and play, communicate with one another, trust one another, have the confidence that when you tell me you're going to be in a certain spot at a certain time, I got to be able to go fast and know that you got, that we on the same page. And in that first half of the season, even when we gave up 30 points or 35 points, the thing that was so not surprising to us because we hear him all the time, but how Honey Badger talked to the media. I like the guys I'm working with. He was so positive about, and it wasn't just coaches talk. He was calling it like, man, I like what I'm hearing. I'm getting some good feedback. We're learning. We're working with each other. It wasn't even about the scoreboard. They were just having so much fun defensively working with one another, and you saw that carrying over in the practice field, and then in the second half of the season, as we come out of halftime, we'll see how it carried over into the game.
Yeah, and as you're listening to this, it was 7 years ago today. On this Thursday, I got the call. They said, hey, Andy's coming, and everything changed. He has been brilliant this year, brilliant in 7 years, but no other can get a team through flashpoints than Andy Reid. And this year, as you mentioned it, the veterans, too, stepping up, guys like the Honey Badger, Tyrann Mathieu. We're at halftime of this Defending the Kingdom podcast, the climb up Kilimanjaro. What's happened and what does it mean as the Chiefs go into the playoffs, celebrating a bye week before they play divisional playoff football? All right, you're going to get 1 second for your halftime. There it is. All right, now we go to the third quarter. Hope you got your restroom break, got your orange eaten, because now we're going to the third quarter. And this is when things started to get interesting and when the toughness of this team, the payoff started to happen. Third quarter of the season, 3-1, and it starts with a victory over, at the time, red-hot Minnesota Vikings. Remember, they had the top runner in the NFL. Dalvin Cook was coming in. Cousins was hot. Stephon Diggs, outstanding wide receiver. Let me read you the inactives for the Minnesota game. Patrick Mahomes, injured. Kendall Fuller, injured. Frank Clark, injured. Eric Fisher, injured. Leray Duvernay-Tardif, injured. Alex Okafor, injured. The Chiefs won this game. Matt Moore was outstanding. Damian Williams had a 91-yard run. There was a 41-yard pass to Tyreek Hill, and Harrison Butker showed some guts in ears and stones and everything else you want to say by hitting 2 clutch field goals. But the Chiefs beat one of the NFC's best teams shorthanded.
Yeah, and they were shorthanded, man, and the Vikings came in with all the momentum. Having that defense coming off of last year's defense, which was a top 3 defense, now that, first half of the season, they're rolling the normal Vikings skull claps going. They're traveling. Half our stadium, right? Don't want to bring that up, but half the stadium is full of purple. The parking lot, they're tailgating. It was a tough environment to be in. But the team drew together. They drew, the adversity made them draw closer. And on that field, what you saw is a team rally behind a backup quarterback that they had faith in. They could play the system. They could compete in the system under Andy Reid and give us a chance to win. But we knew the defense had to be lights out. We knew the special teams, Butker had to be lights out. And the defense just made stop after stop. The end of that game, when Minnesota had the ball and they needed to drive it to try to get, unbreak the tie. Instead, the tide got turned. Our defense stood up. We got the ball back for our offense to go and get in field goal range so that Buck could kick it and win it for us. And then you look at the state of that game. Things were tight, right? The Chiefs and the Chargers battling for first place. No team wants to slip. Well, we going into a game against a NFC powerhouse with our backup quarterback. Oh, with the Chiefs, they're going to lose that game. Chargers going to win, so now the Chargers going to take first place. You hear all of those whispers going on behind the scenes in other locker rooms on the TV. But here on the practice field, guys went to work. They just kept chopping away. Let's find a way to win this week. And like I said, man, when you get a team around adversity that draws themselves closer, not only did it pay off that week against the Vikings, but I think right now, going into the postseason, it's paying true dividends right now.
And this is where we started to see this Chiefs team be really good against the run.
Definitely.
Dalvin Cook, 3.4 carries, the NFL's leading rusher coming into this game. The longest Viking run was 12 yards. And we're thinking, okay, well, maybe this defense is coming on against the run. Now, then you're going to say, well, what happened the next week? Because we saw the Tennessee Titans bust some long runs with Derrick Henry getting the longest one, that 69-yard run. But even the Tennessee game, Well, first of all, it ended up manure fertilizer. That was my tweet of a couple weeks ago. It got retweeted after the game on Sunday.
Yeah, it did.
Because losing the Titan game.
Yeah, a little manure.
Is that manure? No, man, that's fertilizer. Fertilizer, because the Chiefs got the waiver claim on Terrell Suggs. Because after this game, Chiefs are 6-4, but they push on to that. I'm going to lead you to what I thought was the seminal game of the season, and that was the win in Mexico City over the Chargers. Again, we think we read the end of the book and put it away. Think about Chapter 6 against the Chargers and what is happening at the end of Chapter 5. Chargers, or maybe the Raiders, ready to take out the Chiefs. Chiefs are 6-4. They are not a playoff team. This isn't a team that can win it all. I can hear all those national shows. And then to go to Mexico City and to do what they did was impressive.
Yeah, after the loss to the Packers and the Titans, everybody kind of written the Chiefs off. If Pat don't come back, this team is an 800 team at the best. And they got the Raiders that are red hot coming at them. Gruden in his 10-year plan is Josh Jacobs is in full effect. They got Rivers on his swan song. He's making things happen with his two-headed running backs with Gordon and Eckler. Those guys are playing phenomenal. It's the AFC West is up for grabs, is what they said. Historically, maybe not, but this year is going to be different. This year, finally, all that talk about the Chargers taking over the West will come true. Man, that was a bunch of BS, man. None of that stuff is true. Andy Reid has dominated this AFC West since he got here. 25 some out of 27 wins, something like that, some kind of phenomenal stat he got going on with AFC West victories. But he kept that dominance going. It didn't matter at that point in the season what the other teams was doing. He kept his eyes in his backyard. He made sure we were taking care of business every week, being as prepared to play as you can be, going into that week, preparing for that opponent, not looking ahead, not looking behind, taking care of that week's opponent. And each week, the team is built closer and closer. Mexico City was a big production. It was for the entire. We talked about the trainers and the equipment people and all the staff that had to go to put on that game in Mexico City to invest all that time and resources. You had to come away with a win. The team that won that game was definitely going to be the team in the driver's seat in the AFC West. And when that game got rolling and you felt that emotion and that excitement in Mexico City, and to walk away off that field victorious. If you haven't been to Mexico City, it's about a mile's walk away from the field back to the locker room, and a bunch of burnt hamstrings from the players happened. But you could see the resolve and the amount of emotion and excitement that they went there, they came, they conquered, they saw, they won that game and took control of the AFC West right there in Mexico City.
I thought too, this was the game. It's like watching your son or daughter grow up, and then they go to another level, and it's not being having the best clothes. It's being the toughest and fighting through, getting that math assignment done where they were grinding through it. Patrick Mahomes in this game showed me as much as throwing for 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns. It sounds ludicrous. Patrick Mahomes willed his team to win in that game. The stats were not pretty. 19 of 32, 182, touchdown, and he threw a pick. 5 rushes for 59 yards, a 24-yarder that I'll remember to start the third quarter that got the Chiefs enough of a cushion to stay ahead, like playing tennis. Now I'm 40-15 ahead in tennis. It was Mahomes' toughness in that game that showed me that he had taken his game up to another notch that went way beyond stats in winning your fantasy league.
Yeah, man, and not only is that, it's his leadership, right? That was one of the games where you could tell that the team with the leader on the sideline, it had to be a player, not a coach, but the player, the leader, the one that showed the most leadership amongst his 53 that got the guys to rally around him was going to be the guy that won the game. And we all know, hey man, Phillip Rivers is a great competitor. He's a great competitor, but as far as a leader, there's not many guys that lead their teams the way that Pat Mahomes does. He has everybody's ear. Everybody respects him because he shows up early, he stays late. He's always working on his craft, no matter how many times people say he's the master of many arm slots and throwing from the back foot and forth. He's always trying to get better. He's putting in the time to get better. It's not just talking the talk. He walks the walk every day here on the practice field, and these guys are sold out, and they're they'll follow him through a brick wall. They're walking to any kind of fight, street fight, in the ring, wherever you want to fight the Chiefs. you got to believe PM 15 will be the first guy in there throwing the punch for you. So he's been doing a great job all year of doing that, showing that leadership. And like you said, that helped us turn the page to take control of the AFC West there in Mexico City.
And go way back. I think it's our first or second podcast. What does Mahomes do for an encore? Where does he go from here? To me, I show you the game in Mexico City because that's the next step. Because we know, Barbershop, you played this game for 10 years. To win playoff games, more often than not, they're going to be like this Mexico City game. They're not necessarily going to be a 380-yard, 5-touchdown game. They might happen. He's got the ability to do that. I gave the baseball analogy. Instead of, and here's what, what teams gave him, and I'll take it. But when you throw me the pitch on the outside corner and I try to pull it, I either strike out or pop up. So I'm going to take that baby to right field for a double. However, if you make a mistake and throw me on the inside half, it's gone. And that's what Mahomes showed teams he can do. To me, that has to be terrifying to any Chiefs opponent.
Yeah, that was the first time we saw it, but we've seen it many times after that game. That was the breakout game for him because he realized, I don't have to throw 300 yards and 4 touchdowns in order to beat the squad. We have enough balance on this team. Our defense is good enough. Our special teams is good enough. I can just go 80%, man. I can throw 20, go 20 for something, 150 yards, 180 yards if need to be. But I'm able to get yards running the ball. I can run for first downs, keep the chains moving. And I think, like you said, we've been saying it since the first podcast. Every possession, we want to end up kicking the ball, whether it's an extra point, field goal, or punting it away. But when our offense can go first down, then touchdown, as opposed to 1, 2, 3 touchdown, that allows our defense to rest. That allows us to get more offensive momentum. We get to see more plays. We understand how they are trying to defend us when we do shifts in motion. So it allows Andy Reid's his play chart to grow as we see more plays. And so I think that's the one phase that Pat Mahomes has really grown leaps and bounds over is when you come back from being an MVP. And they say the reason you got MVP is because you threw for 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns. Human nature wants to repeat that.
Yes,
Human nature wants to make you, thread that window every time or throw that 80-yard ball every time. He didn't do that because that doesn't give us the best chance to win ball games. And he has grown to know that what makes us a better ball team is to get first downs, and then when we're in the red zone, then we get touchdowns.
And honestly, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning showed in the playoffs they can be a high-volume passer, or I can be a medium-volume passer and still win the games. If you look at the time of possession during the stretch, you mentioned stay on the field, move the chains. He even ran the ball a bunch there. 34-21 time of possession at New England. Denver, 33-33. Chicago, 33-24. The Chiefs had control of those games. And the red zone numbers went way, way, way up. 12 of 18 in the 6-game winning streak in the red zone. That's just toughness by Patrick Mahomes. This is our Defending the Kingdom podcast, climbing up Kilimanjaro. What has it meant? What can it mean? And now we go to the fourth quarter of our podcast. Mitch Holthus with you along with Shawn Barber. And that is the last 4 games of the year, which I call the smoke show. Yep. This was a smoke show. This was everything working together. Offense, defense, special teams. It started in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Again, we know how that story ended. Well, let's go back and read the chapter before that chapter. And I'm going to start with Travis Kelce because the dude has been a Warrior since July 22nd on this team. And the fact that he was productive every week, sometimes big-time productive, sometimes the difference in the game.
He was what we needed. He was a jack of all trades. He could go for 4 catches and 100 yards. He could go for 11 catches and 40 yards. He could get a bunch of first downs or touchdowns. He was a red zone threat and a first down threat. Or he was a blocker to set somebody else free. He did everything needed at that position for this offense to continue to move. And we talk about what is the most important position on the field for offense. Me and some of my ex-players, from my ex-friends, Billy Baber's one of the guys. He's a ex-tight end. And he tells me, if you have a great elite tight end who can block and catch passes, that is one of the most feared things from a defense because he controls the safeties. He controls the middle of the field. He controls the flow of the defense. And if a guy like that is a alpha dog, is a guy who you can't guard one-on-one, you got to double, then it leaves cracks and crevices for running backs. It leaves your speed wide receivers one-on-one with guys that aren't as fast as them. It makes the safety sometimes hesitate before they fill a gap. And that allows a running back like D. Williams or LaShawn McCoy to hit that seam and break it for 50 or 60-yard touchdown. So that position at that tight end position is something that even when the numbers and the stats don't add up, his effectiveness and what he's done to cause a defense to change the way they play or to hesitate just a little bit, it sometimes is way beyond what we actually see on the field. And he's done an amazing job of being a leader in that room as far as a tight end, but also a leader on the offense.
To your point, in the New England game, they look, hey, he only had 7 catches, 66 yards. Dig in a little deeper. When you dig in deeper, when the Chiefs had to answer being down 7-0, it was a big pass to Kelsey on for 19 yards. That was the catalyst for that drive. Then you go to their first touchdown drive, which ended up being a direct snap to Kelsey on the Wildcat. That was a touchdown, but it wouldn't have been there had it not been for a 20-yard pass on 3rd down and 5 from Kelsey, or from Mahomes to Kelsey that was on that 3rd and 5 drive, or that might have been a field goal. So that a perfect example of what you're saying about Travis Kelsey. The rest of the fourth quarter, I mentioned a smoke show. Now all of a sudden you had the defense working hand in glove with the offense. Defense is getting off the field. They're getting takeaways and turnovers. They hold Denver and a hot Drew Lock at the time. Remember, read chapter 9 before you read chapter 10. 3 points. Chicago, even Trubisky he had a good game. Read chapter 11 before you read chapter 12. 3 points. And then to come in and basically control the Chargers in that game for the most part. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. But how has this team developed up Kilimanjaro to get ready for the playoffs? They have become a complementary football team.
Yeah, they've built the house the way you want to build it, man, one brick at a time. Every brick was important. They made sure every brick was balanced and perfectly set before they went to the next brick. Too many teams, man, we're not going to even worry about the foundation. We want to worry about the penthouse. Let's make sure that the bathroom is right. We want to put the accents on. Let's make sure the roof is – no. We in week 1, we took care of foundation. Week 8, we was on the second story. Now it's week 17, and everything has been put in the proper order. And the team, like you're saying, it's the smoke show. Everything is hitting. Complimentary football, firing on all cylinders. However way you want to say it. This is a team to be reckoned with, because when teams looked at the Kansas City Chiefs before, you know what they said? If we can keep the ball out of Pat Mahomes' hand, we can just run the ball. We can take the game with time of possession. That was the formula of beating the Chiefs. You can, after looking at this season and looking how this defense is playing, special teams, offense, how complimentary, that is not the formula for beating the Chiefs anymore. Because you can hold Pat Mahomes to under 200 yards and still lose by 10 points, and we'll still have control of the ball the entire second half. Because each phase of this team is learning or has learned how important it is to play off one another. Right? The landlord, Honey Badger. He's supporting the offense. The offense is supporting the special teams supporting the defense. We went a whole 30 minutes and didn't mention one of the greatest punters in NFL history because he's been underused, right? Because our offense has been so effective, we don't punt a lot. But when we do, he puts him inside the 10. And our defense loves making the other team try. Come in here, try to go 90 yards to get the pay dirt. And even if you do get 70 yards and you're inside the 20, our red zone defense is number 1 in the league, one of the top red zone defense in the league. So all those things are it's just putting more and more layers of why this team is so successful and why they're being coached. And you see penalties going, it's just so many reasons this team is, like you're saying, when the smoke clears and there's one team left, odds on that team's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs, man.
Takeaways, too. I mean, the team has just turned it around. You mentioned red zone. This is a defense that will turn you over. They'll sack you. They'll stone you in the run game. They'll get you 3 and out. Now you got to give the ball to Mahomes. Plus, you get to the red zone, 7 red zone takeaways. Best in the league by far. 4 goal-to-go takeaways. 4 goal-to-go takeaways. By far the best in the league. League average is 1. This is one of the best in NFL history at doing it. People say, well, that's luck. No, to me, it's a mindset.
Yes, right.
You play defense. I don't care if you got the first and goal at the 1 to this team is just the start of life. And that's what I love about this defense, and that's why they can win in the playoffs.
Yeah, keep them snapping the ball. You just you fight, you claw, whatever you got to do, chase the man down, push him out at the 1. Give us an opportunity to keep him out of the end zone. Give this defensive core an opportunity. Do whatever you have to do and individually to win your battles, to make sure they have to keep snapping the ball. We have shown time and time again, collectively, this unit will step up. They'll step up in some form, some fashion. At some point in the game, they're going to rise up and create a big play so that Pat Mahomes can turn around and go score the other way. Or we get a big punt return or kickoff return. Whatever needs to be done, more times than that, the Chiefs ended up making the plays that need to be made. And I think that's just come with starting week 1 of training camp and is doing fundamentally sound football, becoming better tacklers on defense, becoming better pass runners on offense, becoming a better quarterback at setting your feet, stepping up into the pocket instead of bailing out. Receivers running your routes on time and not freelancing as much. Offensive line adding depth to the roster so that if somebody was to go down, we wouldn't lose the quality or the level of play because we missed a Wiley or we missed a Fisher or we missed a LTD or somebody like that. I mean, every position in this offense and defense and special teams, it has been tested throughout the season. And you know what they say, man, when you build up that scar tissue, you gotta tear a muscle up to build that scar tissue. This team has been torn, and now they're as strong as they're gonna be going into the postseason, man. I love what I'm seeing from the guys on the field.
He's Shawn Barber. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs. The Chiefs are not at the summit. This has been a climb up Kilimanjaro. 12-4, 2 seed. AFC playoffs, divisional playoffs start next Sunday at 2:05 at Arrowhead Stadium. But you can see the summit from here. Thanks for joining us on this edition of Defending the Kingdom.
Thanks for listening to the Chiefs Official Podcast Network.
10-5, touchdown! Lock it down! And the celebration begins at Arrowhead.